Hello there! My name is Audra B. Wilson. This is my first YouTube video, so I'm really excited about that. And I like to talk about sci-fi and fantasy. I've been talking about sci-fi and fantasy pretty much my whole life, so I think I have a pretty good grasp on it. But I just started a blog back in May, about mid-May. I am an author, a poet, and obviously a new blogger. And I'll basically be talking about pretty much anything sci-fi and fantasy. I'm not limiting myself to books or movies or shows. And if you have any recommendations of what I should watch or read, please leave a comment, and I may or may not get to it. I do have a full plate, but I will do my best, and I really appreciate those suggestions. Anyway, I also have a work in progress, a novel called Unveiling the Facade. It is a fantasy novel, so if you are interested in beta reading, link in the description below on how to sign up for that. I'm super excited about it, and hopefully I'll get it edited completely by this time next year. Anyway, enough about me. Let's get on to today's actual topic. Anyway, enough about me. I'd like to get on to today's topic. I am a huge sci-fi and fantasy fan. However, when I was younger, like I'm talking early teenage years, I was really annoyed by one thing. The fact that every time I went into a bookstore or somebody talked about the two genres, they often referred to them together as if they were one genre. And when I was younger, I was not about that. As I got older, I just started to accept it as it is. But now that I've started my blog, I really wanted to get into the research behind it and why they ended up getting put together all the time. And I think it's really interesting. So we're going to start with science fiction. The term science fiction actually came from a scientist named William Whewell. Back in that time frame, a lot of scientists and artists lived and worked and congregated together, and they would often gain inspiration from each other because of this. So he came up with a term, and it's stuck to this very day. Think Frankenstein. No, not that Frankenstein. This Frankenstein. It was written in 1818 by Mary Shelley, and she basically wrote it because of a nightmare. However, it has a lot of scientific themes about how far science can or should go. This kind of explained how people felt about modern science at the time. People didn't understand how far it could go and if it should go that far. Now, the popularity of Frankenstein really inspired a lot of other writers to go along this line, talking about science in fiction and kind of explaining how people felt about it. Now let's talk about fantasy. Fantasy has its origins way back in the ancient world, where mythology was the thing that explained everything. But it didn't really come out as a genre of fiction until about the 19th century. It was about mid-1800s again. Around the same time that science fiction was coined. A little bit later, I think. I think it was maybe like 1840 or 1850 that it really became a genre in and of itself. That's because during this time, again, we have gone through the Age of Enlightenment, and people are starting to believe that magic isn't real. A lot of stories with magic were considered to be children's stories and fairy tales and fables and things that would just teach a lesson to children. It wasn't really for adults. It wasn't until George MacDonald and some other authors really brought fantasy into the realm of adult fiction, and that was about 1860s. Now, George MacDonald is the one credited with bringing the fantasy genre to adults. That's not to say there are not other authors around that same time frame that had books that were fantasy genre that brought it to adults. No. He's just credited as the first. And he possibly is the first published. I don't actually know that. As I said, he's the one credited. So then we get to 1896, where William Morris published his work that had the first fantasy world that did not involve the real world. It was not set in the real world. It had no part of the real world. And then that leads us to the 1900s, where fantasy really started kicking off. Now, it wasn't until about the 1930s, when j.r.r. Tolkien came out with The Hobbit, that people really saw fantasy break out again. Again, that's not to say there were not any good fantasy novels during that time frame. But with The Hobbit's popularity, we really saw a surgence in fantasy novels. And then he came out with The Lord of the Rings, which really punched through expectations yet again and brought fantasy to the world of adults again. So with the surgence of fantasy genre yet again, we get into the modern fantasy, which was really kicked off by j.r.r. Tolkien, the father of modern fantasy. Now, we can separate all different kinds of fantasy, we can separate all different kinds of science fiction into different categories called subgenres. We're not going into that today. I'll talk about that another time. Things in fantasy have really evolved in the past century, and I'm excited to see what both sci-fi and fantasy have next. So let's get back to the real question again. Why are sci-fi and fantasy, two very different genres, put together all the time? Well, there is a lot of overlap. A lot of sci-fi fans are fans of fantasy, and a lot of fantasy fans are fans of sci-fi. I'm one of them, and I know a lot of people that are the same way. That is not to say that every sci-fi fan is a fan of fantasy, or vice versa. In fact, there are plenty of people out there that will not read sci-fi, that will not read fantasy, but they'll read the other one. So, the reason they're put together, though, is because of that overlap. There is a vast majority of people that are interested in both sci-fi and fantasy, and there's some reasons why. Just look at Star Wars. On the surface, it just looks like sci-fi, right? You got space, you got laser swords, you got laser guns, you have all these lasers and spaceships going on. It's hard to see that there are a lot of fantasy elements to Star Wars. You have Jedi Knights. The way they use their lightsabers in combat is very much like the way you would use an actual sword in combat. And just think about it. Star Wars even starts off just like a fairy tale, which is fantasy. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Very reminiscent of Once Upon a Time, right? And you know what? It just feels old. I like to think that sci-fi and fantasy are kind of on this timeline, where fantasy starts in the old days, it goes to present, and then sci-fi picks up at present and goes to the future. Now again, there is overlap, and this does not account for the time in which a book is written. Obviously, in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, we're not riding around on horses anymore. So, I would consider Star Wars to be both sci-fi and fantasy, because there are elements of both. And on top of that, if you look at the themes that sci-fi and fantasy authors use and the elements they implement, you'll pretty much see what I'm talking about. For example, tell me if these sound familiar. The themes: good versus evil, quest for power or knowledge, tradition versus change, individual versus society, man versus nature, man versus himself, coming of age, love, betrayal, and the unlikely or reluctant hero. And then you gotta look at the elements that they often have. Otherworldly races. So for sci-fi, you have aliens. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? And then fantasy, you have elves, dwarves. There are so many other races in fantasy, just like there are so many alien races in sci-fi. It really just works together. And then, of course, you have the fictional worlds. So, should they be one genre? I'd have to say at this point, no, they shouldn't be one genre. But should they be put together? Yeah, I think so. We have no idea where sci-fi and fantasy are going to evolve next. They may become so unrecognizable to what we have now that they definitely need to be completely separated into their own aisles in the bookstore and with their fans as well. But they could evolve to be so much closer together to where it really doesn't make sense for them to be not one genre, and for them just to have multiple subgenres together. And honestly, I don't have a problem with it like I used to. I'm going to be talking about both anyway, so kind of makes sense for me, right? Anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you think I might have missed something, or you have a suggestion for something I should watch or read, please leave a comment. If you would like to beta read Unveiling the Facade, please follow the link in the description below for details on how to sign up. And if you just want to read the works, go to audreybwilson.com. Please like, subscribe, and have a great day. Bye!